So, Senator Keller, you introduced and succeeded in getting passed legislation that reforms the State Investment Council in New Mexico. First and foremost, what is the State Investment Council and why is it important to citizens in New Mexico?
Sure. The State Investment Council is it's a quasi-government institution that actually manages all our land grant permanent trust funds. And what that really is, you can think of it as a statewide endowment. And we use those funds every year. There's a distribution from those funds to help pay for our operating budget. And it's very, very large. The SIC specifically manages about 16 billion in assets. And we have some other funds too, but the SIC has discretion to manage those funds in any way they want, as long as they produce a positive return for the state.
And you obviously thought that there were some problems and issues with the State Investment Council and what it was doing. What alerted you to those problems, and why did you feel the need to take action?
Sure. Well, it was amazing. I mean, there were kind of two problems that came out as early, really 18 months ago is when I kind of got on board. And in a previous life, I worked on Wall Street for a while and in private equity, so I at least understand the terms and the issues at play. And what we found out in the interim was a couple of things. Number one is our performance was the worst in the entire country. We were in the bottom 1 percentile versus our peers, and that's just bad for our state. And it's bad for everything that our state funds, which includes education and healthcare. The second thing was, it was clear there were deals being made that were not in the best interest economically or just in terms of transparency of the state. So we had these issues with third-party marketers. We had hired, I think, 37 different advisors for a fund that could easily use 10, if not fewer. So those kinds of issues tipped us off to the fact that number one is we're losing lots and lots of money. Number two is we're doing it in a way that is completely inappropriate for this type of operation.
So what did you do legislatively, specifically, to reform the SIC?
Sure. So we worked on an omnibus bill, and it's something I drafted up in the interim and worked through the Investment Oversight Interim Committee. And then as the session came around, we actually rolled in several different bills into it. And at the end of the day, there were essentially 10 ideas, let's say, and I won't go through all of them, but the bigger ones were, number one is we separated the control over the SIC from the operations of the SIC. So previously, the governor's office actually was in charge of appointing everyone who was supposed to oversee the SIC and hiring the SIC manager and approving all contracts with consultants. What we've done is we've separated that out. So the board of the SIC is now a mixed appointed process, some governor, some legislator. They have expertise requirements. That was another issue. These are professional individuals, much like lawyers or accountants, who have professional certifications. And previously, the SIC board, I think, had one chief or certified financial advisor, and that's absolutely embarrassing. And so hopefully we fixed that. So we've also added expertise. In the third big category is we've layered in all sorts of reporting requirements. So they have to report out to the legislature, to the public. We've opened up the meetings so there's public comment, and we've required that every single contract be, number one, public, and number two, approved by this board, rather than going directly to the CEO or the chief investment officer.
So is the SIC now where you want it to be, or do you think there's more work to be done?
There's still more work to be done. The good news is we've come a long way, and I gotta say, we get very jaded about the legislative process, and I know the public gets very cynical, but this bill in particular was a wonderful example of how the system can work. We produced 60 pages of very, very good legislation, I think, and it was a result of an effort of leadership and my co-sponsors, Senator DeVell and Senator McSorley, committee chairs and both chambers' leadership. So we did a lot, but what's left is, number one, we have to take the governor off the board. Just structurally, that doesn't make sense. No other states do that, and it's, in terms of governance best practices, it's a conflict of interest. So that's step one. Step two is I think we need to layer in some expertise requirements for these private equity funds that we're investing in. because we still have very few people who know and understand how to evaluate those opportunities and deal with those opportunities. And lastly, we've got to work on liability, and this is a statewide issue. Right now we are paying for lawsuits against the former state investment officer, right now the chairman of the ERB, and I mean these are to the tune of $200,000, $300,000 a year. And we've got to figure out what is appropriate indemnification and what is egregious. Right now I feel it's egregious.
Now you mentioned some legislators, and there was a bipartisan group of legislators. How was the politics of this, getting it done in Santa Fe?
Well, I think I'd call it the sausage-making process, which I know we refer to often, at least inside the chambers. And what happened is we had broad consensus in the legislature that we needed to do something. But the things we needed to do really get to the heart of the separation of powers in our government. And so those kinds of changes are never easy to pass. And what happened is, at the end of the day, everyone came together, but we certainly had competing interests throughout the process. This bill was substituted 4 times. It had 3 co-sponsors, and it was unanimously approved in every single committee, even though there was resistance, behind closed doors for all sorts of different reasons, some personal, some who knows actually why.
And what kind of support did you get from organizations, outside of the legislature? Any people or entities that were key to helping this happen?
Sure. It's not a glamorous topic, the State Investment Council, and it's something that the public really doesn't know that much about. So it's very hard for, kind of advocacy organizations to glob on, and frankly, your constituents, rarely, it's not at the top of their mind. So a couple of organizations really helped out. One was certainly, I have to credit the Albuquerque Journal for covering it, because it is by definition not that glamorous, and they really have done a great job of saying this is why this issue is important and articulating that. The Rio Grande Foundation did some great research and helped us really surface a lot of these underlying advisors and sort of conflicts that were there, so that was helpful as well. And then also we had folks in the business community who actually work in venture capital and investing, not for the state, but they're just seasoned professionals in this area. And they were appalled that they have to run, a solid business, and the state who does the same thing doesn't. And so they were the ones at the end of the day who really helped lend credibility to these changes. I say this on, 2 final thoughts. One is it was a pleasure for me to be a part of this and help champion this effort from the start. But the single greatest piece of satisfaction for me was seeing it passed with bipartisan support. Eventually got the governor involved, and that to me at the end of the day was, you've got a good idea when, number one, it was hard to get everyone on board, but at the end of the day, every single faction, group, chamber, party, everyone agreed to the changes, and I think that's something I'm grateful for, and hopefully we'll be able to do again at some point. The second thing I'd share is our state investment funds in aggregate, so the SIC and the ERB and the PERA, which are retirement funds, are about $30 billion. And if there is anywhere where we should pay attention to things like transparency and accountability, it should be these funds, because they absolutely are the future and the real asset behind the state of New Mexico. And it's very rare folks even take a look at them. So I want to encourage everyone out there to help take part in watching those funds.